Yes, mine is not working. We had one pop there.
Hello.
All right, yeah, it's working. I didn't get any. There's no audio in this. No audio. Do you have anything?
We can hand back and forth.
Just turn that one off just in case. Yeah, please don't.
All right, I won't.
You got it? All right.
Yeah, so it was
Cool.
this one that was dead.
Hello. Hello. Just like to get everyone's attention because we're going to get started here. We figure it's about 3:30. We thank everyone for being patient with us. And we thank everyone for joining us today for leveling the playing field, removing the barriers to entry for developers and creators. My name is Patrick Tuig, creator of Elements. And we are a solution for developers to help you build scalable games on the fly. We're here with a fantastic group of industry leaders, David Mata and Michael Gilmore. And our third panelist, Aaron, is not able to make it due to a family emergency.
He's actually holding our drinks right now.
Yes, that's exactly it. So, yeah, we're we're all here because we're all passionate creators and entrepreneurs, and we're all trying to blaze the trail in this space. And so, when breaking into markets, typically competitive markets like the gaming industry, app industry, we've faced many challenges. And so, what we're here to talk about are the challenges we've faced over the years and how we've solved them. And how we've moved through them. I'm going to turn over here to David so he can introduce himself as well as Michael. So go ahead, David.
Hi, I'm David, and I've been making games for about 20 years now, actually, as of this month. And I just realized that when I was in the bathroom, and I was like, God, I'm old. So I've made some of the largest games in mobile, specifically, where we created the concepts of microtransaction model as well as the idea of live ops. Moving on from that, I'm now the head of product for a company that has 3 different business lines right now. Games, publishing, and drink down. All right, no dead tech, so that's good. And tool development. Plus, I cook a lot. That's pretty much how I survive. Your turn. Otherwise, I'm just going to go off onto some weird tangent.
I'm Mike Gilmore. I'm with a company called Metal Mobile. We specialize in mobile apps, but it's really kind of our starter with most people because we really are a platform company. So companies bring us in to either fix their problems or to create a full-scale solution. And I think my mic's being a little weird, but I don't think I need a mic. That's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
for the stream, you're going to.
Oh, okay.
Because we're live streaming.
Sorry about that. So, anyways, is it working?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that
good.
one.
All right. So, yeah, we basically build full-scale platforms for all of our customers. I've been actually involved in engineering since the late 90s. Moved to California around the time of Hurricane Katrina, came out here, worked on a lot of video games. I think about 15 years ago, met Pat, worked on a very large project with him. We had over 350,000 daily active users in the Philippines, of all places. It was a basketball game. It was really quite interesting. Yeah, and I think that my focus on now is really helping enable our team to deliver full-scale solutions and meet extremely complex solutions for products that are, in automotive, healthcare, and education at the current time. So, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Michael. Well, with that, we're going to begin my questions that I have here. So the first question I have is about scalability. And many game developers encounter significant issues when scaling infrastructure. We've heard many particular complaints about systems like PlayFab and ExcelByte. And we've tackled those challenges head on at Elements. What are the biggest threats you've experienced to scalability in the projects you've done, and how have you managed to mitigate those risks?
So I think some of the biggest challenges, the biggest problems, mistakes I've made when it came to scaling is I had a couple games that went over 50,000 concurrent online users, which means 50,000 people hitting every aspect of my servers. And at that time, it was before the rise of all this cloud, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And we had our own philosophy of making sure that we had colos in the places that we needed to have our own hardware. The problem was we never could really develop an assessment model for what it would take to identify when a surge was going to occur and then scale up for that, which led to us just spending probably 5 or 6 times more than we should have to have excess hardware available at any time. And then we kind of figured it out at one point. We put out a Super Bowl ad for the, 2017 Super Bowl, and we hit, that day, we hit 1.5 million users, and I think something like 75,000 concurrent online during the Super Bowl itself, and we were only using half of our servers. But we got to that point by spending way too much money on what we were doing. At this point, I'm looking at these exact same questions with Maglev, right, with my company now. And the way we're looking at it is we're redefining how we build out our server architecture, and we're actually taking knowledge from the telco industry, and we've started rebuilding everything in Elixir. But we're also going back to this old belief, like right now we're using cloud services. We're going to go back to actually starting our own colos.
I think the architecture is a really solid point. On my end, I think that whenever you talk about scalability, I think if you don't actually know what you're running things on and your team can't support it, they're not capable of it, especially when you start getting into pioneering like new technologies. Like as an example, we worked on a project that was mostly REST-based, traditional, worked great. It worked great. And then someone brought up bringing in gRPC into the mix, and they intermingled the technology. And the percentage of people that actually knew the technology was only like 1% of the development team, right? So then when we started scaling, that meant that one guy basically didn't sleep for like months at a time. So I guess my motto is you got to keep things simple, and you got to really know if your team can support it, like enough people to where you're my phone's talking to me, so I'm just going to put this away. Yeah, you have to know the technology that you're working with, and everybody should know it. So like one of the things that we always try to do is like, if you've got a team that's 90% JavaScript, and you try and give them a mobile app to support and a JavaScript backend, why not build the app in React Native, right? Not go and have an introduction to Kotlin and Java and Swift and Objective-C and trying to learn all these technologies and support it when it goes live, right? Because if you don't have that number of people that all know it, then it's very, very hard to support. So.
Well, I think the question also comes back to sustainability, right? You can't have that one guy on the team that's getting hit every hour of the day because he's the only one that knows how to do it. You need to spread that load out amongst your entire team. I think the biggest thing that you would have to look for is you have to do it either in a push-pull approach, right? You have to look at what your team knows if you already have a team in place, or you have to go with what your CTO wants and then hire the team around that, right? We're going with the latter as opposed to the former.
Yeah. Unless you make Pat do everything.
No, I'm not going to do that. All right. Well, you touched upon this, and I had one for operational management and burnout. With Elements, we place a focus on sustainable operations. As we know, IT operations teams are frequently put on call, which leads to burnout due to extensive work hours and managing faulty systems. How have you dealt with operational inefficiencies in your teams, and what strategies have you used to avoid operational burnout?
You want to go first or me?
I'll go first. I'll take turns.
Okay, because I've got a super easy answer.
All right.
I hope mine's super easy. I think that what we try to do is to force a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday work schedule. That's it. Like almost no exceptions if we can. There is going to be that one time in a month, or that someone has to pull in a couple hours on a Saturday night or whenever the traffic is lowest. But we really do mandate that where we work, and we all share that value as a company with each other. And I think that's what makes working there and also like handling client projects really well, because clients probably won't like to hear it, but it's also really important that you don't go and say, yes, we'll commit to supporting you 24/7, right? You should have enough sustainability built into your system to where the amount of work you actually have to do outside of work is minimal anyways. But for me, I think it's mandating that type of schedule at work.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Now I have to revise what I was going to say to not copy you, but essentially, I'll go the other direction then. We scope down. We scope down, and I will change a deadline if it looks like my team is going to crunch. I'm one of maybe 2% of game companies that won't crunch at all, because I'd rather have my team healthy and happy and putting out excellent work than what we see continually with teams that are crunching because scope is wrong or because deadlines are wrong. That quality of work that gets put in just continually drops until essentially your team has to have a long period of rest in order to come back. Except none of that applies to leadership. So me, I work all the time,
Yeah.
right? But that's kind of the risk.
So how do you avoid burnout?
I cook.
All right.
Or I occasionally disappear for a day and go spearfishing, or I'll go to Disneyland, or I'll just disappear.
So you take time for yourself.
Occasionally,
Okay.
but not as much as I should.
Well,
But I have big shoulders.
there you go. All right. We have a question here for player retention and engagement. Player retention is crucial for the long-term success of any game, and finding effective ways to keep players engaged can be challenging. At Elements, we focused on building features that foster player sustained involvement. And what strategy have you found most effective for driving player retention and engagement in your projects, and what challenges have you faced in keeping the audience engaged over time?
All right, so in my opinion, and I've been doing this for a long time, specifically about 14 years now focusing on player retention, and it is really derived from gameplay in the game sense, right? Or that interaction, meaningful interaction, whatever that app has as its interaction loop, it needs to be meaningful and catchy. If you don't have that, no manner of user acquisition or marketing play or promotions are going to keep people retained and in the game, or in the app. So you really have to figure out, and it's a step beyond product market fit. It's what is that, essentially the secret sauce, that thing that you are providing to your user that nobody else is. And then through the live ops process, which is everything that occurs after release, how are you, investing and increasing that interaction? So the games that I've worked with, we put in social scaffolding, so that way all of the content doesn't rely upon me. Players create content amongst themselves, right? We've also created, when I release a game, I've got the next 18 to 36 months mapped out when it comes to what are the new features we're putting in, what are the new story content, right? It's more than just, here's, our, what is it, do we have a Labor Day event or whatever it was, just a holiday that occurred. Oh, I'm sorry, Indigenous Peoples Day, which is today, right? Yeah. So we don't just have a little sale for that. There's actually story beats, there's actually new interactions, and there's actually meaningful gameplay tied to that.
I think you pretty much said it for me too. I mean, the biggest thing is that no matter what you do, a good game is only a good game with a good mechanic, period. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want to play it, you're not going to come back. And I think that when it comes to like sustainability, the challenge and the solve has to be there, like what it is you're solving for, because every good game that you play and you come back to has something that you're like going towards, a goal or a solve or a challenge, and you have to make sure that that's like meaningful, like he said. So if you've got a solid game mechanic and you've got a challenge that someone's going to pick up and keep going and think about when they go to bed, and then they wake up and they go, hey, I'm going to play that game again because I really got to get to this next level, that's what's going to keep the audience engaged. And so somebody is always working on that, keeping the mechanics solid and building in that challenge, all the marketing in the world won't make a difference if the game's no good. So
There's also an aspect of emergent experience that occurs. We have that idea of breaking the fourth wall. And in this case, this would be where that app or the game, whatever it is, breaks the fourth wall and gives the player enough story and interaction and experience that when they do leave, go to bed and think about it as they're falling asleep, they tell their friends about it. And then that creates additional layers of interest. We try to boil it down to the idea of virality, but really it's this emergent gameplay that exists outside of the game that reinforces the loop within the game itself.
yeah.
And it's really hard to do.
Yeah, it is. There's so few games seem to break into that, that top spot, and we see things like, in mobile world especially, like if you're not in the top 5 or 10, you are significantly separated from everyone. Just out of curiosity, and what are your thoughts on where AI is going to help you with some of these tasks and live operation, and where do you see AI helping? Well, especially specifically live ops, but really, how do you see that working long term?
I think you touched on it there, which is the AI-based live ops. I don't necessarily think that a complete AI-driven solution is anywhere near where it should be right now to create generative game content, right? And to actually understand the user's emotion. But I think that if you are using AI to augment what users are converting on, to find that little sweet spot, right, to get a higher conversion rate out of them, or to make the gameplay more engaging, but it still has a human element to almost all those things right now. But at least for me, I think it is on the ops side in general, being able to ensure that in-app purchases are converting correctly, being able to notify a system and if it can self-heal, right? In some cases, this is going to sound funny, but at the end of the day, I still remember many, many days where rebooting a server wasn't the best option, but it was the one that worked to get people back in the game, right? Yeah. So, things like that I think are where AI can help is simple things like that, rebooting the server, clearing cache on servers, cache busting, all of those things.
I have to say, so I have to admit that we are experimenting with AI on our tool side, but AI has significant limitations. Right now, it's smoke and mirrors, right? A lot of bullshit comes out of it. It doesn't, when it comes to visual things, it doesn't pass, a simple smoke check, right? Uncanny Valley is fairly safe from what's coming out, but where I've found that it has value is context awareness. We feed it game design documents or documentation related to marketing or how we're going to position a story. And it then acts as an assistant to a designer to help them just more quickly remember what the context of the game is, what the overall impact of a particular change is going to be from a single system, where it's not readily apparent when you're working in, say, a spreadsheet, right? The other thing that we've seen some potential value is customer service support, right? Having that context again helps customer service people who often in a lot of companies, we keep them away from the design functionalities. So they don't have that full idea of what the app or the game is. And then the third one, I had it for a second, then I think I lost it. We can come back to that if it comes back.
Was it filtering out bad actors and bots?
No, that's a good one.
Yeah.
No, that's actually a really good one. No, it was pattern matching.
You should have just taken the third.
Oh, no. No, but you helped me get there. Pattern matching in statistics. So feeding it a large data set and asking it for, some focused insights on what does these data say related to this particular context or this particular scenario. And it's a lot quicker than somebody going in and pulling data from SQL, cleaning it, and then running their own work in Excel. Right? So there's been a lot of just man-hours saved, people hours saved, sorry, in that particular functionality. And then what we're exploring is taking, an LLM and training it on statistics, just at an academic level, and then seeing if it can work as an assistant to a product manager.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Michael. Security. Have we ever dealt with security ever? And I say that because sometimes security is often considered an afterthought due to production pressures. Yet it is obviously crucial for success. We develop our products, of course, to emphasize server authority as the main security model from the start. How do you balance the need for security with the fast pace of development, and how have you escaped, or how have how have escaped security defects affected your projects in the past? If you're willing to share that one.
I've spent millions of dollars on trying to secure my games. That includes taking people to court, which is a big waste of time, trying to cut down large swaths of botting accounts. No, for us, there's no trade-off, right? It's you have to focus on security, otherwise it's going to bite you in the butt, and it's going to cost you a lot of money because you're going to have to take care of it anyway. So the start is just server authoritative commands and functions, right? Beyond, what are you going to do if you make a change to your app, people don't like it, and so several of them start sending out a DDoS, right? How are you set up? That's, server configuration. Mm-hmm. How are you set up to protect against that?
Have you seen that happen? People go that
has
spiteful?
Happened to me. Oh, I've gotten death threats from my players. I've been doxxed. I've had people stalk me. People are wild.
Huh.
That's why nothing phases me anymore. Like, seriously. So you have to be ready for that because there is some asshole somewhere that has access to a really easy-to-use script that will send a DDoS, right? Or will go through and attempt to brute force one of your databases, right? So security is just part of the development process. And if you don't do that, you're going to get your nose smacked.
So build it as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't compromise.
Or just don't go.
Yeah, or just don't go. All right, Michael?
I think that it's important that you don't be held hostage by security when you're developing your game. It should not be something that is considered such a high importance that you forget about the game itself, which is actually pretty common once security teams come on board. A good example is I've seen massive audits where they, I don't know if you ever heard of OWASP, but it's kind of a practice that a lot of people use. And a recent project I worked on, there was maybe 200 user stories to work on and develop. There were as many security tickets for it, and then some. And half of the security solutions got dropped because they were just too technically complex and they weren't even right for the users. And one thing that I do say in mobile in particular is some of the best security still is like fingerprinting, right? Making sure it's the right user on the right device. And once you have those solutions down, that they're pretty good. Because I think that the standards are already there for most APIs and servers, but at least with mobile devices in general, it's ensuring that people don't have phone farms and things like that spike scores and spike rewards and things like that. As long as you can figure out what works best for your game or your app, then that's the kind of security that I recommend implementing. And of course, it goes back to the same thing with the technology. If the team is on board with what they're capable of and they can implement it and you're seeing it working and it's built into the process, then it's doable. But if you do make it an afterthought, it will catch up with you for sure.
Yeah, and really the balance point is you have to look at the user's experience. Any additional tap or click that you implement in order for security to occur is not going to give a significant amount of security on the player side, and it's going to cause user churn. Because no matter how much security user side you put, biometrics, eye checks, whatever, people still share accounts. People will share a password. You can't control for that. So in my opinion, my perspective at least, I focus heavily on everything past the user, right? Don't give them an environment where it's easy for them to cheat, and they will be less inclined to cheat.
So that's like a human factor up front is what you're saying is for that, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's go through. I think we'll have time for, one or two more here? What do you guys think? Let's see. One I have on technical debt and sort of, long-term versus that. Rushing through production cycles often leads to technical debt which is a short-term solution creating a long-term problem. We designed our systems obviously to prevent that, offering security and stability up front. How have you balanced the short-term gains with the long-term technical debt, and how do you, on your projects, account for it? How do you mitigate it, and where do you solve those problems?
I would say that 75% of the work that we actually take on that's net new is just entrenched with technical debt, like right up front. How we tackle it is simply by determining a nuke or pave option, right? If they've got that much tech debt, we look at the problems they solved and then we rebuild it if we really have to. Most of the time we don't have to. We can figure out an iterative approach, but to avoid tech debt, I think it's just good practice. It's good PR, it's good tooling, right? Like all of the commits that you make should be scanned properly. Figure out what your code rules are, but don't make them stupid. Don't make developers feel dumb over a comma, things like that.
Tabs or spaces.
Yeah. So what we try to do is make it like super simple in the process for all the developers, be on the same page, just like everything else that we do. If they have a massive amount of tech debt on any type of project, you really have to figure out, is it hurting performance? Is it hurting user churn? Is it hurting monetization, right? Because that's key. If you don't make money, what the hell are you doing it for, right? So if you can figure out where the performance is being hurt, then you identify your biggest problems to solve for, prioritize them, and then take those down. And again, a lot of tech debt that we typically see is either that it's a monolith, and it's also like built with thousands of lines of code inside of a single file, and so there's good practices to solve for that, and you just have to figure out what those are and prioritize them on your team. But that's kind of how we approach it. But yeah, a majority of the projects that we take on that are pre-built are littered in tech debt. And as an observation of the industry, I think that there are some really great things with saving a buck, right, to get something done. Just don't make sure it's part of your core platform, because I think that the team that actually builds it, that are living, breathing people wherever they are in the world, those are going to be the people that make your game successful or your app successful. If you are just kind of like, take the whole thing and then take it back and should be no problem making a fix later on, you might get in trouble.
Myself with tech debt, I kind of look at it from two approaches. One, what is the impact to the user? Two, what is the impact of performance? And then I just base it against, is it cheaper to fix it or just rebuild it? And if we rebuild it, how do we rebuild it better? Most of the time we just rebuild it. And so the idea is really just build systems in such a way that we are not generating tech debt for ourselves in the future, but that's never going to happen. So we try to minimize.
All right, so I have a specific question.
No code, that's true. All right, if you didn't catch that, he said no code, no debt, which is very accurate.
That is one way to do it.
I think that's an argument for no code environments then.
Perhaps, yes. Really, the less you maintain, you have to maintain. The more it's someone else's problem, the better, right? So, for David specifically, before you scaled Ebony Online into the millions, you were a chef. So you're no stranger to speed and precision under pressure. In your live ops processes, what is your secret sauce?
Go slow.
Go slow?
Yeah. So working in a kitchen is nothing like working in an office. It's much easier to work in an office. And people get a little weird when I just say that's bullshit, right? We can be direct in the kitchen, can't be direct in the office. And so what it does is it does give you the opportunity to look around things. In our case with live ops, a lot of the people that I've worked with in live ops teams, don't have much in the way of diverse experience, right? So they're going to look at a problem. They know one solution. I want to build teams where we have multiple approaches to different problems, right? In my case, the way to avoid, this is an old racing adage: go slow to go fast, right? You've got a little bit of racing experience yourself, so go slow to go fast. With our live ops, in particular, strategy around that is really take your time, make sure you have it figured out as much as you can on a strategic basis, knowing that, the first time a player comes across it, it's going to ruin the entire strategy. But have your planning all put together I like to do 18 to 36 months. And then as things happen, we iterate as problems occur. And that's really the big key. And that's something that I brought from the kitchens, is with the iteration part. In the kitchen, you taste it, change it. And then eventually it'll taste right.
All right.
Right? We don't tend to do that in software. We just make it and be like, oh, it's done. Well, no, it doesn't work. So you got to iterate. And that's kind of the big thing that's been different from the way I run LiveOps compared to how a lot of other companies do.
How big was your, what's the biggest team that you've run for this, in LiveOps?
200 developers.
Yeah. Sizable team there.
A little bit.
Yeah. Michael, what do you have to add to that? Anything?
No,
God, I'm good.
I gotta get that mic.
I'm so good.
You are good. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, oversimplifying for me is I think that you have to focus on the solve. You have to solve that key problem first before you can do anything else, And that's kind of how our process works too, is you solve the big problem that you need to solve. Like if it's the POC or the MVP, as long as that works, then you can iterate like hell on it and it'll catch like wildfire. But if you don't get that one thing figured out first, you cannot iterate and constantly improve that product. And so you end up wasting a bunch of people's time over the year. Like, don't worry, it'll catch on. We're just going to add that one more feature. It'll be great, right? Formula for failure.
Yeah.
Well, I've changed, in fact, the entire way that I design features to follow the MVP release 1, release 2, release 3 model to give us time to actually iterate. So when we put a feature out, it's not because that's what the feature is. It's what I think a good 60% of the feature should be. I get user data in, and then we make changes. And then so by the time we get to that V1, that V2, we're 95% of the way there, right? And then you just keep iterating over time.
Very cool. All right. Michael, we touched on this earlier, and this one was specifically for you. You've shipped your fair share of projects, right? I think you said that you've done about 400 apps or so at Metal, give or take.
Yeah.
So how do you see, and this is more of a general, how do you see as an agency, how do you see AI really changing it? Do you see it replacing your developers? Do you see it replacing the human element, or where do you see it kind of fitting in long term?
I think that AI is like steroids. Too much of it, you're going to freak out and destroy the place.
Yeah.
Too little, maybe not enough strength. But in general, I think that the allure of AI is something that is kind of misleading to a lot of people, especially if you're green in the industry. I believe that if you have a foundationally strong skill set, right, like you own that single skill set that you've honed over the years, then it'll be a shot in the arm for you, and it'll just make your jobs easier, especially with the dumb, mundane things you don't really enjoy working on that could be automated, but you just haven't had the time to do it. These sort of things can do that for you. I also think that there's interesting things you can do with it where maybe you're just having an off day and you need to sort of think about an idea or a solve that you didn't think of before, and you can't pull everybody in the conference room and waste their time because you're on deadline, right? So for me, I think it's an augmentation. It's not a replacement. And I think that if you learn to weave that in your organization and everybody's got a little bit of AI power up, and I love, there's a lot of concepts out there, but one of them is called Kaizen, which is like a Japanese concept, but it's just that 1% of getting better every day. I think that we hold ourselves to this weird thing where it's like, I'm going to be a senior developer 1 week out of college, and you walk on a team and realize you're in over your head, right? You have to give all of those things time. So if somebody who's using AI, it means that you need to just kind of understand what it's solving for. Your thing really well, and then use it. Don't use it to teach you that skill that you're already trying to hone. Use it to augment what you already know, and I think that you'll see a lot of output, and it works for everybody. But if you just use it to be lazy on your job, people will know.
I will know. And that was a very fair and balanced response. I'm impressed. Mine has far more expletives. I think it's dumb. Right, so what AI is doing right now is allowing the non-creative and lazy to fake like they are talented, which, good for them. But the people who are talented, like you're saying, should learn to leverage AI because it's going to let them disconnect from the stuff that's mundane and just I don't want to say bookkeeping, but kind of like the bookkeeping parts of our jobs. For me, I'm a product manager. I have to worry about 3 different business lines: strategy, leadership of people, mentorship. What I don't have time to do right now is sit down, try to remember all the SQL that's in my head to which database do I want to pull data from so I can look at this particular thing. I want AI that will say, I tell it what I need. It goes and it pulls that data for me and gives me that information, right? So essentially an interactive dashboard where it is context aware and it's out of my way. Like that's where I think, for those of us who are well experienced in what we're doing, that's where I think it's going to be best for us. And then for people that are learning, I think I've used this to play with different types of learning, particularly within the ultra learning spheres of approaches. And using AI to actually work as a adversarial tester, where you say, this is what I think, what do you think? And it comes back with a reason why you have problems with what you made. I think that has a potential to increase somebody's speed to expertise, right? But you still have to do the work.
100%.
All right, well, I
And I
think...
want AI to do my laundry.
I don't know if it can do that, but...
Then what's the purpose of anything
I think
anyone's doing?
they are working on that, like a Tesla robot, I think.
I would like AI to win all of my arguments with everyone in the office.
We just have to have a bigger... All right, well... at this point, I think I'm just going to open it up to questions. Anybody who has any questions, feel free to come forward. Alfie, I can hand it to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, this is top of mind for me. I have a call with my team in Vietnam in a bit just to discuss this. Is DevOps with different partners around the globe. How do you manage and coordinate? Are there some best practices or some rules of thumb there that you can help guide me as a first-time studio owner?
I'm glad you went with an easy question. Honestly, that one's a little hard for me to answer just sitting up here off the top of my head. That's something I have to think about. The challenge is, amongst multiple teams, you have a couple different problems, different cultures, different time zones, also different infrastructures, right? So there's a lot that you have to worry about. Right now, I'm dealing with a lot of developers in South America, as well as Eastern Europe. And so I have some challenges there, but I think that's a question that you and I should talk about over on the side, because I need to think about that for a little bit. Do you have anything to add there?
I would say that I don't know how other people solve for us, but for us, what we decided to do was nothing beats an anchor tenant in the region where the team is. So we literally scouted someone and just made them an employee in the area. That way they could go and find out if they were really the team or they were working out of a Domino's pizza, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's your DevOps team. We don't want that.
Essentially that's centralization of authority.
Yep.
Right, and that is one approach, a current approach that we're taking. There's many others. Let's talk on the side.
All right, cool. Any other questions? Just a brief intro.
Phoenix, attorney, broker, developer. Son, who's a major gamer, and I game a little bit on Xbox and other things. So what does the world look like 5 years from now? Where, according to Vinod Khosla and the OpenAI guys, 80% of Americans are going to lose their jobs. And they're going to have a lot of free time. It looks like UBI is an inevitability. So obviously people are going to be gaming more. Are we going to have choose your own adventure stories or holodeck type things? Do the studios get involved in gaming more? Where do you think things are going? And I know that's a tough question, but you have a better crystal ball than all of us, I think.
Well, I think we already have early approaches to attempts at the holodeck idea, right? Over at Downtown Disney, they used to have an interactive VR play arena. Right, so that was kind of close. It was kind of neat. The whole idea that in 5 years, 80% of the people are going to be out of work, that's bullshit. That is pie in the sky, sandhill horseshit. and I can be quoted on that. I have little tolerance for them in particular. But basically, what we're going to look at is some jobs are going to be lost, yes. There's going to be a lot of money burned in venture to support AI companies that are going to grow, do nothing, disappear, right? If we look back to 2000, we can see a model for how it could work, right? That whole dot-bomb era. We have the new web van coming up. Now, from a gaming perspective, I think we do have the ability to, very quickly, very soon, do micro-segmentation, where we can very granularly define the segment that somebody is a member of, and then create slightly different gaming experiences just for that person within the same title, right? So if some people, like jump scares more or like to be observers more, they're going to have a slightly different experience in something like, say, in 3-4 years, what the next Until Dawn is going to be, right? We can't really guess, but I think, from the things that I've been seeing, we're going to have NPCs that are trying to be run by AI. They're going to be slow and not work very well, because that's just the nature of AI. And then a lot of games are probably going to try to put a small LLM within their game package themselves that runs on your GPU, which is then going to result in probably less performant games for a while. And then, like your toy, what is it called? Vision? What? Sorry, I'm not an Apple fan, so yeah. I think there's going to be more things that come up like that, so we all look like very special people walking around with things on our faces, not really interacting with the world. Kinda, yeah, except, yeah. But then again, I have a VR headset myself. I just don't ever take it out of storage. But he was demoing this Apple device, and it's kind of neat, but there's not a lot of interactivity for it yet. If they can prove out the market, I think we're going to see a lot more experiences there. And I think the Mandalorian, the way the Mandalorian has been developed, particularly using Unreal, might actually be kind of the seed point for what future cinematic experiences can be. Because if they're building those environments, those scenes in Unreal, that means there's no reason that the camera has to be fixed to a single viewpoint, right? You can be another camera and move around that experience. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, oh, sorry. I thought I was going to see if you were going to add anything.
Andrea Tagliaferro, I work at Beat Library. My question is on retention. So, with gaming and any other software, we always want our users to be there the most of the time. So you've been in the industry for so long. So my question is really, what have you learned or what you wish you could tell yourself when you were starting that journey of like how do you can retain your customer the longest? So just best practices or just best processes for us.
Thank you. I think from a best practices standpoint, you should really think about what is the purpose of your app? Why does it exist for that user? Excuse me, sorry. The games that I've worked on were very highly competitive, right? The whole experience was around how you can crush somebody else, right? So that entire game loop, that entire game experience was based on pitting one person versus another, right? So my approach, the strategy that I'm going to use to generate engagement there is going to be significantly different from something that may be a single user experience. Like for a library, so you have an app that is really focused on getting people connected to reading resources and maybe even ebooks and taking them away from Audible and things like that, right? So you have to think about how do you make that experience rewarding, and we're just talking about just enough to bring them back again, just for another session, right? And it really comes down to the context of your application and the segmentation of your users. So if you really understand your users, that gives you the greater opportunity to figure out what your actual product market fit is, which then will lead into how you interact with them, right? And you have to give them a little bit of challenge, whatever that challenge is contextually. There's an idea of flow state, right, where something is difficult until you exhibit mastery, and then it gets more difficult. You exhibit more mastery, it gets difficult again, and you fail. And then it gets a little easier. And then you exhibit mastery, and it gets more difficult again. And then it keeps you at this point where you're going between mastery and failure, right? And that's the flow state. You want to keep your user in that state for as long as possible. And it just comes down contextually to what that is for your app. Some apps just can't. Like the Starbucks app will never have that experience.
I think from my perspective, I've worked on more games for other people than I've worked on my own. And in my experience, the best way to handle retention is to silence all of the product ideas coming in from people that are just throwing them out there that don't have any understanding of what the customer actually wants. I think that if you want a really solid game that hangs on the users, or an app, or any experience for a user, you have got to listen to the users. You've got to put mechanisms in there that get their feedback and understand that there's going to be noise in that, but you got to read into it. Like, one of my favorite things to do, even to date, after 20 years, is go to Reddit on any product. I know it sounds funny, but on any product, you can find some of the best complaints. Top of the line automobile manufacturers. People spend their days thrashing these apps, right? And it's more real than what's in the App Store because people buy reviews, right? But these communities help sort of enforce the truth in some ways. And so I think that if you're curious enough and you really want to understand what the user wants, and also maybe you're in line with some of those users, like, oh yeah, that is a really good idea. I think that actually helps retention. It's really caring enough to understand what it is your customers want. Without that, no product succeeds.
You know, the easy way to figure out what they want is just ask them. You know, as a product manager, a large portion of my work is actually qualitative analysis, even though most of us in the games industry try to focus specifically only on quantitative. Qualitative is extremely important. And so if you can connect with your users, directly ask them, what do you want? Build that experience around the mean, not what one person says or not what 10 person says, but the mean of what you have. And that's going to help you start iterating in a direction that'll be, you know, more than performative.
Very cool. All right, thank you, David. We'll have a question here.
Hey guys, my question has to do about monetization. So microtransactions, for instance, has kind of devolved into almost a cuss word among gamers.
It has always been a cuss word.
I'll
tell you, even back in 2010.
Gotcha. Between microtransactions, loot boxes, seasonal passes, subscriptions, live service games, how do you decide what model to go with when you're making a game? Like, what goes into that decision? How early does it start? You know, whatever you want to touch on there.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that can be said about commonalities, right? If you are entering a niche and everybody does X, you should do that too. There's a reason for that, right? Another kind of easy thing to do, check what the top 5 games do, right, in your category. Now, myself, I tend to be a bit rebellious. I'm not sure if anybody's noticed anything about that yet. But I tend to think like battle passes, season passes, those are bullshit, right? The microtransaction model was created to essentially democratize the game experience, because it creates games that are free, right? Prior to that, we had to pay 60, 70, 80 bucks to play a game and then see if it was any good, right? So when the game is free, and you add these microtransactions, they have to really be meaningful. They have to give you something that you need within a specific context of the game, right? And if they can do that, you're going to pay, right? And you'll probably feel pretty good about it too, because a lot of times what you're paying for is trading money for time. And I think that's a fair trade-off myself. When you start getting into things like, Wordscapes does this, right? They have this completely abusive monetization scheme where every level that you play, you have to watch 3 or 4 ads. And then they will charge you $10 a month to turn off the ads. That's abusive. And I think that's where we look at for monetization that doesn't work and doesn't really benefit the user. If it benefits the user, then have a season pass, but it has to make sense, right? Or have gotcha boxes, right? The reason gotcha boxes work is the same reason Las Vegas works. People like to see things spin and go ding, 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 ding. I used to work in casinos before coming into games, right? You look at the slot floor, people are on that stuff all day, right? Because it's fun. Not particularly fun for me, but fun for them. And so you got to also give them kind of that experience they want. If that experience goes into the purchase event as well, then that's adding more, arguably, adding more entertainment value, right? But every one of those revenue things that you put in, revenue features, has to add to the entertainment value. Otherwise, there's no point to it other than abuse.
I think that's all well put. The only thing I'll add is just because we had the conversation at lunch, and that is that people don't want to pay for shit in games, period. They want them to be free for life, right?
No, I think people are willing to pay.
They're willing to pay if the game is really, really good. But if you're just downloading a game and you want to play it, I don't think they want to pay for it. I mean, 10 years ago, when we were first kind of breaking the ice with apps, the paid app up front got 0 downloads, right? The freemium ad-driven model seemed to work, and a lot of people jumped on that. But I think the tools that we would use are simply just competitive research, because it's really hard to gauge that, and then it's obviously getting in the right data to understand what the user is willing to pay for, right? But yeah, in our case, I think it's very, very hard to monetize. It's a very competitive landscape out there. Billions of games, billions of apps, billions of websites, and now even with open source communities, there's so many like free games that you can download if you know how to do it. And those are actually built to be free.
I'm going to give you 2 evil things. One, learn about something called prospect theory and what it has become. 2, think about how social interaction can drive monetization. That's all I'll say. But that is essentially how you can build a billion-dollar game.
All right, well, I think that wraps up questions, and I think we can do maybe one more. Adam, is there one online or anything? Okay. So I think with that one, that will be the last one. And so as I have your attention here, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, everyone for showing up. We're going to be here for another 45 minutes. I want to take a moment here to actually just do a quick demo of our project here. So this is Word Rally. This will be up later this will be up on here. But this is the game that we've built entirely within Elements, and we actually have a live demo of this. So if you check this out on the App Store, you can also see we can just show you the just a quick demo of the admin panel of the game. So our product, Elements, allows you to have a complete digital inventory management system, single sign-in, missions, daily quests and whatnot. We have a complete profile system, leaderboards. We connect to several blockchains, allowing you to manage your inventory, as well as various custom metadata within the system. All of this is available right now. You can download it from our website. And it's everything you need to basically start building a game right out of a box, a game or a gamified app. And so with that, just let me know. We can get in touch after this. We can give a quick demo of everything we offer. Let's go back here. And then finally, for anyone who's actually currently working on a game or has an app in progress, we partnered with a couple of other studios now to fill up our fall-winter cohort for venture studio projects. You can access our network of partners. We offer co-marketing, co-development support as well. Right now, we have 2 projects in the venture studio pipeline. One is a Steam game, Operation Harsh Doorstop, which is a milsim shooter game similar to like the old Arma game. And then we have an indie project called Sniper Punk, a multiplayer game. And we're going to be releasing those projects over the next year or so. We'll be bringing those to consoles, adding monetization, digital economies to both of those projects. And so those are very exciting opportunities here. We encourage everyone to submit your ideas to us through our website. You can scan that QR code that'll go up on the rotation. In addition to that, at Elements, we do co-development, work for hire projects. We can build back-end and cloud services for games as well as the games themselves. So with that, once again, thank you everyone for coming out. And we have the room here for the next 45 minutes, hour or so. We'll be serving drinks. Feel free to network, and thank you once again for coming.